Good morning. August 25th, 2025. This is Brett, that strange thinker, down here in North Carolina, thinking about some other strange thing. And the strange thing that I'm thinking about today comes on the heels of my study of art and culture, and in particular some of the really amazing buildings and statuary around this planet, which really truly does not work with what we're taught about how these things were created. We're told about famous sculptors who had wooden mallets and chisels, and somehow, contrary to everything anyone who's ever used a hammer has learned by the time they're 10 years old, that somebody could take a great box-shaped block of marble stone and with a chisel carve it so well and make no mistakes that some of the art you see in this lesson here is said to have been produced with hammer and chisel. It's just not possible. It is just not possible. And for me, it was two particular sculptures that I was looking at that 40 years of creating art in utilizing as much of what I've learned about the way that people have created things over time. I've done a lot of sculpting and constructing. There is absolutely no way in the world, without precise rotary power tools, that a person could make what appears to be a rope net out of solid marble with a chisel. To look at the net in this picture is to look at 10,000 places where the slightest error with a chisel would break a large portion of that rope sculpture off instantly. Stone doesn't glue together well, and it certainly didn't 400 years ago. And then there's these sculptures of women that appear to have veils over their faces, transparent veils over their faces. The realism of these figures defies reason. To look at it, you can't conceive of how to reverse engineer this thing. How you might make it with a hammer and chisel. And the kind of chisels that are being produced today out of better steel. No way. Those women with veils over their faces and those mythological figures from history with wings and eyelashes holding rope nets, these were not carved with hammer and chisel. So what I'm going to do right now is get to the clips that I've taken from David Lynch's first adaptation in film. It was his only adaptation, but this was the first adaptation of Frank Herbert's cosmic spiritual trilogy, Dune. And in the Dune books, there are a race of women who for millennia have been engaged in deep occult practices. And they call it the weirding way. And it is mind over matter, mind over body, mind over muscle, mind over time, mind over pain, mind over temptation, And in the books, it was a mental discipline. However, in David Lynch's film, where you see it depicted the way it is in the book, but because this is a war film, David Lynch decided to take this mental physical discipline, okay, like an intellectual martial art, and send it through technology in order to further weaponize it. And I saw this movie when it came out 41 years ago, all right? And I thought this was a particularly interesting scene.
Move back. This is part of the weirding way that we will teach you. Stilgar.
More deep. More deep. More deep. More deep. More deep. More deep.
My name is a killing word. They are ready to fight. Yet in order to lead them, I must conquer the worm. Conquer Shai-Hulud.
Years that have passed since then, I've done all of this sculpture and anthropologic and cultural study and wondered, how did anyone make the things out of stone that we're told they made with chisels? How did they chisel a temple out of bedrock and create an under the surface of the ground stone temple with anatomically accurate elephants and people in it? Pillars, columns, excavated rooms from the inside of this solid rock temple. Folks, there's no way people did this with copper tools and hammers. They just didn't. There had to have been a technology, and I don't know what it was, that was able to manipulate rock and stone, and perhaps concrete, man-made stone, in a way that you could make the stone experience controlled liquefaction by somehow amplifying the mind through technology. An ancient building process where the only limit to what you were creating with stone was your own imagination. You know, I look at these temples all around the world, these pyramids, step pyramids, and other structures. Wherever you go, they're the same, but they're very personalized. As though a group of individuals with just the kind of body, mind, and spirit to create a temple and a culture in a specified location with a general blueprint of what the temple's dimensions would be, but the actual appearance of the temple and the statuary around it would be designed and executed by whomever the individual that is the leader in that place. And as such, we see very similar structures all around the world that look like a different artist following a structural blueprint was permitted to take it as far in the decorative direction as their body, mind, and spirit wished. And there were bells in most of these structures. And there were minarets and metallic technology on the tippy tops of these structures, which are now gone. And there were absolutely remarkable bas-reliefs, wall sculpture, wall art, which modern organizations like UNESCO and national reliquary organizations and preservation societies have been documented concealing and keeping people away from for as long as I suppose there might possibly be something left to loot inside of it. It's something to think about. But in my opinion, the whole notion of buildings and sculpture being done with chisels and copper tools, copper loses the battle with rock every time. Just like in rock, paper, and scissors, the rock can break the scissors. So I'm guessing that a lot of these structures were created before the great global flood of every culture on Earth. Stone survives water far better than wood and metal. And a flood buries things in sediment, which in a way would have a preservative function. I'm presuming that there were pre-flood devices and technologies that made stonework a breeze. And after the flood, some of those technologies were found by a select group of rather secretive people who saw in it power and wealth. And they coveted that so much that we've never seen it used since. Nobody's chiseling out stone sculptures of this complexity and realism. No one is, and no one was in the 16th, 17th, and 18th century. These things were found and cleaned up. And in many cases, anatomical differences in these sculptures were removed, like sixth fingers on hands, and many faces. What did those faces depict? What did those faces on creatures that were anthropomorphic but had 6 digits on their hands and feet? How were their faces different? And why aren't we allowed to know easily? Folks, knowledge is increasing, and people are so able to go to and fro physically and intellectually during this computer age. Wouldn't it be nice to have a mechanism that could turn rock into art by focusing and amplifying the creative thought process? It would be lovely. It would be lovely. This is a pretty short one today. I got up very early this morning and I'm listening to the critters and the birds. I've fed my cats. Seems like it's going to be a nice day. It's been cooler. There seems to be a lot of closure happening. A lot of closure. A lot of closure in the chaos.
Arthur, King of the Britons, your knights of the Round Table shall have a task to make them an example in these dark times.
Good idea, O Lord.
Of course it's a good idea!